Previously on this channel, we looked at the best examples of freeway lids in the US. Today, it's Lids, the sequel, and the 10 freeway segments with the best lid potential are coming your way. This is CityNerd, content on cities and transportation, coming your way Wednesday at noon Pacific every week. Viewer suggested topics always welcome, and I had a lot of requests for a follow-up on freeway lids, which was itself a viewer suggested topic. Today's video was already in the pipeline though, thanks to this comment that came in from viewer Daniel Bird on my Freeway Heavy Downtowns video. I'd be interested in seeing a video about freeway capping. Perhaps a list of specific sections of downtown freeways that are the most obvious candidates for being capped. Well, viewer, your wish is my command. So this is going to be a top 10 list of the most cap-worthy freeway segments in the US, but 10 just really doesn't do this topic justice. So stay tuned to the end for an extended honorable mentions section where I'll include Canada and Mexico. Now, I'm not gonna rehash what freeway lids are and why we build them. So if you want a refresher, I'll leave a link to my first video down in the description. So to come up with a top 10, I really wanted to look at 3 criteria. 1, how big of a lidable area is there? The bigger the better. 2, how central is it? Just on the theory that a lid downtown is going to give you more bang for your buck than one in a less vibrant area. And 3, I gave more credit if it was a bigger city. There are good potential lid projects in like Tulsa and Little Rock, but they're not going to make this list. So to see how all this plays out, let's look at an example of a location that didn't make the top 10. This is I-10 in El Paso. So first, a pass-fail is the freeway below grade, which is a must if you're going to try to knit the lid together with surrounding land uses. And what I looked at was, do you have a dense set of overcrossings? Because that's a pretty clear indication that you have a segment that has lid potential. Then to determine the size of the potential area, I looked for a continuous freeway segment where you have overcrossings that are no more than 1,000 feet apart. It's a bit of an arbitrary benchmark, but I wanted some sort of assurance that the freeway is running consistently below grade for a given stretch. So for El Paso, we've got 8 roadway crossings, 2 ramps, and 3 pedestrian overcrossings, all around 350 feet apart or less. So we know we've got a consistently below grade segment. On our other 2 criteria, the segment of I-10 is right smack in downtown El Paso, so this is going to score really well on centrality. But on the other hand, El Paso itself, not a very large city, unless you count Juarez in the metropolitan area, which I didn't. So that's how I evaluated this. Keep in mind, this is a very sketch level way of looking at this, and the actual feasibility of any of the locations I'm going to show you is probably all over the map. That was more preamble than I really wanted, so let's just get into it. Number 10 is I-670 in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. Part of the segment is done already with the Kansas City Convention Center, but there's a lot more of I-670 that could be capped over. The freeway situation in downtown KC is pretty dire, as I've talked about in my previous videos, but there is active discussion of capping not only this location, but I-35 on the north side of downtown as well. Number 9 is I-676 on the north side of downtown Philadelphia. This is a stretch of freeway that got pretty famously inundated last fall. It's super narrow, only about 100 feet across most of the way, so it really should be kind of a slam dunk in terms of constructability. In fact, there are already 3 mini lids in place, 2 near Logan Square at the west end, and 1 at Vine Street Park on the east end. So yeah, let's just lid the whole thing over, or I don't know, just truck in a bunch of fill and get rid of it altogether. Number 8 is I-405 on the west side of downtown Portland. I've only included this segment from Northwest Gleason down to Southwest Columbia because I don't want to assume it's straightforward to deal with the ramps at US 26, but if you could figure that out, there's a lot more potential to the south. Lidding 405 has been brought up from time to time, but the location ODOT's actually looking at lidding over is I-5 in the Rose Quarter area, where they're looking to widen the freeway footprint as well. I'm not going to get into too much editorial comment just because this is another one I've actually worked on, but just a general thought. There's an idea out there unfortunately enshrined in a lot of our policy, that because gas taxes come from people who drive, we should be spending those funds on things that make driving better. And I just don't buy the logic of this. It would be like if we took the revenues from cigarette taxes and invested it in, I don't know, things that make it easier for people to consume more cigarettes, like building more dedicated smoking areas and installing new cigarette vending machines. I don't know, someone make it make sense. Number 7 is I-95 on the west side of downtown Providence. A lid here could really help knit downtown back together with Federal Hill and the other neighborhoods to the west. So for all of these, I'm doing a little bit of research just to see if there's already a lid plan in place. But all I could find when I Googled Providence I-95 is that the DOT managed to get an infra grant to quote unquote improve the segment just to the north, which will apparently eliminate congestion. I don't know, it sounds like a solid plan. I mean, when has adding lanes ever failed to eliminate congestion? Number 6 is I-83 on the north side of downtown Baltimore. This one's a bit out there in terms of feasibility, but I love it too much not to include it. First of all, Baltimore Penn Station is right smack in the middle of the area in question, because here you're capping over not only the freeway, but the Northeast Corridor tracks as well. You could really reconnect all the areas around Penn Station and make it even more of a focal point of downtown than it is today. And Baltimore is such an interesting city. It's affordable, it's got great bones, great access to the other cities on the Northeast Corridor. And look at the space, there's just so much you could do with it. So let me know your ideas down in the comments. Number 5 is I-5 in downtown Seattle. The Washington State Convention Center / Freeway Park showed up at number 3 in my list of existing freeway lids. So this one is for a potential extension. You can cap I-5 to the north all the way to Denny Way and all the way south to Madison Street. Again, I won't get into too much editorial comment here just because of my history with the project, but the folks behind I-5 lid are not thinking small. Nothing definitive, of course, but they've envisioned a lot of new development, not just new parks. Anyway, again, I recommend you head over to their website to check it out. And their case studies page is a great place to learn about existing and proposed lid projects all over the US. Number 4 is the 101 on the north side of downtown LA. Now we're getting into locations where the potential is so staggering that there has to be some sort of proposal already. And for LA, that is Park 101, which is a little more modest than what I'm showing here. It only looks at the segment between Hill Street and Los Angeles Street. And it's mostly just parks over the freeway, but you can see how they envision it really catalyzing development on the north side of 101. Number 3 is I-90 on the west side of downtown Chicago. This one's been called Millennium Park for the West Loop. And the renderings look kind of like the High Line if the High Line was in a depressed freeway instead of on an elevated rail bed. Part of this is already lidded, but the segment from Grand to Monroe is just really ripe. Number 2 is I-85 in downtown Atlanta. The existing proposal is called The Stitch, and it spans from the Civic Center MARTA station on Peachtree all the way to Piedmont Street in the south. Concepts for this have been floating around for at least 20 years, and they actually got awarded close to $1 million for planning last year. I'll leave links for all of the proposed projects down in the description, and this one seems like kind of a slam dunk. But Atlanta folks, give me your thoughts on this Stitch down in the comments. Okay, before we get to number 1 and honorable mentions, of which there are many, be sure to give this video a like, unless you prefer uncovered below-grade freeways running downtown, which, I guess there's no accounting for taste. Subscribe if you want to support the channel, and let's check the numbers. We now have enough subscribers to fill Dignity Health Sports Park, home of the LA Galaxy. Just look at all that beautiful impervious surface. LA, always such a trailblazer in urban design. Honorable mentions. First, I did review Canada and Mexico for this, so let's talk about it. I had to take a good look at Viaducto Miguel Alemán in Mexico City. it sort of meets my overcrossing spacing criteria, but some of these are pedestrian overcrossings, so you really have to take a closer look. And in this case, what it reveals is that the freeway isn't that far below grade until it dips down underneath the cross streets. So it's not as if it's impossible to do something here, but it's not the low-hanging fruit I'd want for this list. Then up north, Montreal is really interesting. You've got the A15, which runs to the northwest of the city. You've got an existing lid at Place Grove Hill, and there's a long segment that definitely has potential, but it's pretty distant from downtown compared to the entries on this list, and it's super narrow, so probably not a ton of development potential. Similarly, there are a ton of locations with potential in the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn, and some in New Jersey. And maybe by some metric, every location in the New York City area should be higher priority than everywhere else in the US. But I didn't do it that way because it would make a pretty boring list. And like Montreal, most of these are not really close to downtown, even if you define downtown as Long Island City or downtown Brooklyn or Yankee Stadium or Newark. And Boston is worth a mention. The existing lid over I-90 was number 2 in my previous video, but there is a lot more you can do here. And I understand they're looking even further west at the area behind Fenway Park. And finally, let's go to Cincinnati. This segment of I-71 is just too short to make the list, but look how perfect the location is. You can knit downtown together with the stadiums and the river. There is a proposal out there called Connect the Blocks. Not sure how much traction it's got. Let me know if you have insight down in the comments. Okay, number 1 is I-30 on the south side of downtown Dallas, aka the most freeway-heavy downtown in the US. You know, when I put Klyde Warren Park as number 8 in my first lids video, I got a lot of comments from Dallas people saying, why only number 8? It's a huge asset to the city, it's a beautiful public space, and it's crazy busy all the time. And I think the popularity of Klyde Warren really goes to show that in some of these cities that really came of age in the mid to late 20th century that were really impacted by auto-oriented design, there's just an incredible appetite for this kind of walkable public space, especially when you think about what it's replacing. And for I-30, TxDOT is actually looking at shrinking the footprint of the freeway itself by eliminating some ramps. And if it happens, it should really help reconnect downtown with the South Side / Cedars neighborhood, which is the location of the future North Texas high-speed rail station. Okay, that's all I got for today. Thanks for joining. Hey, let me know if there's any locations you think I missed. Keep the great topic suggestions coming, and I'll be back with a new installment next week. I'll see you then.